to the Across the Pond NFL podcast. It's time for another preview of a wildcard game. We had Browns Texans earlier. We've now got what will be the first lot of Sunday games as the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and I'm joined by a plethora of guests. First of all, in the black and yellow corner, with us today is Freddie Hall. Freddie, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you, Andy. Appreciate you having me on.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure having you on. The other member in our black and yellow corner is also a Freddie, as we have Freddie Harper-Davis. Freddie, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very happy that we've managed to sneak our way into the playoffs, that's for sure.
I'm sure the city of Pittsburgh is building up murals for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, right?
Absolutely. We love a bit of the Jags. Thanks for falling apart for us.
Yeah. Well, I remember me and Freddie came on literally to review, I think it was review week 17. We were talking about the permutations of Pittsburgh getting in, and it seemed like a lot had to go your way, and it turns out that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it was a nail biting few moments for sure. But I don't know. Going in early in the week, I was very negative Nelly. But when it came down to sitting down to watching the telly, and it was like, well, Jags have got to lose. I was thinking, well, this is entirely possible. The Titans are a decent offense. Nothing to write home about, but the Jags have been on decline a little bit. Like it felt like it was a bit more feasible than when people were just reading out in the week, like, oh, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. So, yeah, I suppose perspective came back around, and I mean, we did ourselves a favour beating the Ravens as well. Obviously, a weakened Ravens. It'll be a lot different if we come up against them in the playoffs again, I think, when they're at their full strength and full might. But we've just got to overcome the Buffalo Bills first.
And speaking of which, in our blue, white, and red corner, we've got with us today Charlie Nelson. Charlie, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. Now, we're meant to have a second Bills fan, David, who's been on the podcast before. He hasn't been able to make it, so it is 2-1. But with my sort of my allegiances, it's technically 3-1. So I do apologise, Charlie.
Well, a little bird told me that you're a closet Bills fan after your trip to Buffalo. So
Yeah, I mean, I made some good friends there, but I especially after last weekend, especially I can't root for the Bills. I think the fans, I think if they're gonna win it, I think that I'll be happy for you guys because you are the best fan base in the league. But yeah, no, I can't say I root for them too hard, especially now they've broken my heart.
the problem is with Miami fans, there's not many of them left. They keep selling their tickets to Bills fans.
Yeah, that was really really Bills dominated. I mean, we saw it in London. I mean, we all had the Bills Jags game, and that was Bills heavy. And it seems like Miami was filled for the Bills fans once again.
Yeah, it was. It was, feel like a sort of 50-50 crowd. I mean, it was weird if you listen to the audio of the Deontay Hardy punt return. It's loud. There was a lot of Bills fans there. But yeah, I mean, we always say amongst Bills Mafia, there's no such thing as a part-time Bills fan. You're in, you're all in. And we travel en masse. It's fair to say. Although there's quite a lot of tickets going quite cheaply this weekend. I think both Pittsburgh and Buffalo fans have seen the weather and don't fancy it so much.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And what was your reaction to winning the division? Because it seemed like a month ago, it seemed like it was ours to lose, and it seemed like there was no way back. I mean, you had that daunting schedule of it was definitely Chiefs and Cowboys. I believe the Eagles were in there as well,
Yeah.
and everyone thought, right, that's it. They're going to lose at least 2 to 3 games. They're going to lose, maybe even lose all three. Dolphins are going to win most of their games, and that'll be it. But you beat the Cowboys, you beat quite convincingly. You beat the Chiefs as well. And yeah, you've gone on and beaten us on the last day, and you've won the division. I mean, just yeah, how surprising that to you? Because yeah, it just seems for so long that it was done. So how good is it for you to not only win the division but also get the second seed? Just how incredible of an achievement is that for your team, who at one point apparently done by the media? Obviously, you fired Ken
Yeah.
Dorsey. The hiring of Joe Brady seems to have completely galvanized his offense.
Yeah, I think that, and also this the story that came out about Sean McDermott and this sort of weird comments. It seemed to really galvanize the team, the players that are there to back Sean. And we've had some scheme changes, of course, with Joe Brady. When we were 6-6, I think there was something like a 2% chance of us winning the division and getting the second seed. It was kind of crazy. I always knew though that Miami had that really tough end of the year schedule. So I thought that if we could make a run, it would be great if that week 18 game was for the division. And of course, that's again how it played out. I mean, once you guys really struggled against the Ravens and the injuries piling up, I felt relatively optimistic. But yeah, to win the division from that position of 6-6, 11th in the AFC at that point in in the calendar, I think it was sort of beginning of December. It seemed like an awful long way off. But this AFC is a gauntlet. I mean, there were so many. What was it? 7-7 teams, 8-7 teams. It was always going to be really tight. But the Bills had to sort things out, and we've seen Josh being allowed to run again, which he really didn't do much under Ken Dorsey, using his legs. That adds that extra weapon to the team. And you just saw how impactful that was against Miami on Sunday.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be an exciting game in Buffalo. 6 o'clock on Sunday for UK fans, and that's going to be a 1 p.m. Eastern kickoff for those in the States. Of course, the Bills are the second seed. The Steelers are the seventh seed, so we all know who the bookies' favourites are. But Freddie Harper-Davis, of course, no TJ Watt. With him not being there as well, your best player, but I think by some distance, how can the Steelers beat the Bills on Sunday?
Well, this is a nice, easy question to launch ourselves into. I think, well, Nick Herbig's going to be a big part to play, obviously, also from Wisconsin. So another guy who's we've brought in intentionally for this sort of scenario where we've decided to, after last year and we lost TJ Watt for a big chunk of last season, we went, right, hang on a minute, what if this happens again? What if we lose TJ? Have we got the backups in place to be able to at least have some sort of fallback if it all went wrong, and we could then at least then not fall apart, because we are 1-10 without TJ Watt. I don't think people outside of Pittsburgh realize just how important TJ Watt is. And I hear all these Myles Garrett lovers about how he should win Defensive Player of the Year. Nonsense. TJ Watt walks that. If anyone sensible looks at the Defensive Player of the Year rankings, TJ Watt wins that by a landslide. But I'm not in PFF, so I can't put them right. But no, more seriously, I think it's always an uphill struggle going to Buffalo at the best of times. But without TJ Watt, it's going to be a real struggle. One advantage for us, so unlike Miami, if Miami were going to Buffalo, is the wind, the cold weather. Actually, that doesn't put off the Steelers at all. It probably benefits us in many ways because we've got that run game, which has been really, really good over the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks. Finally, we've managed to have some sort of offensive line performance, so we can actually get the likes of Warren and Najee Harris actually getting some decent yards on the ground. And we saw in the performance in Baltimore on Saturday night it was just horrendous rain. Wasn't really a passing day. Mason Rudolph only had 2 incompletions. Yet he only had 1 big play, but that's how we won the game. So yeah, I think the weather will help us. I think running the ball and grounding on the Bills is our best shot. But I'd be lying if I sat here and thought I'm confident we're going to go into Buffalo and beat them, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, the playoffs are the playoffs, and, it's a kind of year where there are shocks, and it's, almost a different tournament completely to the rest of the season. So I think you've got to view it as, if you win it, you can win it. And I think we've seen, shocks over the years. I mean, I try and think on top of my head, but I can't think on that. But there's been plenty of shocks in recent years, and I think this game, has the most potential for a shock. Even with TJ Watt out, I think that run game you mentioned there, I think it's a really good. I think that's your way of winning. I don't think Mason Rudolph wins you that game. And now with TJ Watt out, you can't really say he'll win you the game on defense. So I think the likes of splitting the reps between Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, I think, is probably the key to winning this game, particularly on offense. But for you, Charlie, obviously you've got a defense which has players such as Leonard Floyd, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau. These players have the potential to stop the likes of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and these aren't like big. These not big names like Aaron Donald or Myles Garrett or TJ Watt. These are just a lot of really good players. So, just how do you see them dealing with that run attack that Pittsburgh have to offer?
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, if we were playing this game 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'd be way more concerned because we had Daquan Jones out for most of the season. He's our one tech, and he's absolutely critical to stopping the run game. Greg Rousseau on the edge is excellent. He's one of the best run defenders in the league. Ed Oliver is also really, really good. It is a really good unit. And however, the Bills have surrendered yards on the ground over the season. They are inclined to do that. Not typically play after play after play, but they're a bit inclined to lose the old explosive play, where somebody runs for 40, 50 yards, one mistake here, one mistake there. I do think our linebackers have been pretty good at stopping the run generally when we face these sort of strong running teams. But I think it's the main weapon that Pittsburgh have. I think the one thing that perhaps is in our advantage is that we're not especially worried about Mason Rudolph hitting us over the top, so they can go all in, stop the run, and play man coverage in the secondary. I think that'll be the tactics. And obviously with the weather, it's going to be a low-scoring game, probably an ugly game. It'll be one of those games where a field goal isn't a bad result if you can get it through the sticks with the wind. So anything can happen. But I think the Bills, generally speaking, are relatively well set up again in this matchup on defense.
Now, switching from defense from Buffalo to Pittsburgh, now Freddie Hall. Now, you mentioned obviously Watt's a big absentee, but we've seen Josh Allen. We saw it last week. We've seen it pretty much throughout his whole career. He has these moments where he has these mental blocks and he makes these terrible throws or incompletions or fumble. I think we saw 3 turnovers in the Dolphins game. And whilst I do think that he's going to call back, that it doesn't bother him because he can just go and win you a game even with those in mind. But do you think the likes of maybe Joey Porter, Minka Fitzpatrick on the secondary, they're on terms of your defense, especially with Watt no longer there in this game, just how crucial do you think they're going to be in terms of, Stephon Diggs hasn't been really himself, I don't think, the last few weeks. Gabe Davis has had his moments, but he's very hit and miss. So do you think that's potentially your way of winning? The fact that if you do get stuck on your offense, on your defense, Josh Allen could have one of his days, and you can use the likes of Fitzpatrick and Porter, or even someone like DeMonte Kazay, and they could even be the guys that could win you the game through interceptions, through even coming through the nickel and forcing Josh Allen to fumble it. Is that potentially where you can win on defense without TJ Watt?
I think with our secondary this year, it's been all right. I've always been quite negative about our secondary this season. However, when I talked to on the franchise tag and to other supporters of the NFL, they're always like, well, no, your secondary is really good. It's just you're used to very, very good secondaries, whereas we all around the league actually don't have very good secondaries. So I think I've been quite critical, but that's how you beat us, is going over the top. I think Joe Porter is coming on strides and strides. I think Patrick Peterson's a player that's really important in this sort of game, the experience he brings. We've had our linebacker injuries and they've played at a decent standard in the closing out of the season. And I would say we are a great defense with TJ Watt in the team, but we are still a very good defense with TJ Watt out of the team. I think Alex Highsmith has got to be looking at having a really big game. If we can force the pressure to Josh Allen, he's pretty good in pressured situations, but if we force him just to make 1 or 2 mistakes, that is what tips the balance in these playoff games, is them little mistakes. But I have to echo what Charlie said. I think it's going to be a little bit of a 1990s style game. It's going to be very run heavy. And really that has actually suited the Bills, who have more famously for getting it to Diggs, getting it to Gabe Davis, getting it to their tight ends, and they've reverted to James Cook a bit more, and it's been really successful for them. And I think there is a little bit of frustration maybe in the Buffalo receiving core because they're becoming a little bit less pass heavy. But that doesn't mean that they're going to switch off. Diggs and Davis are both really good receivers, Diggs especially. And your tight end unit is really good as well. Yeah. So it will be definitely a battle. But yeah, I have to echo Charlie's prediction that it was probably going to be low scoring and maybe a field goal in it. I don't think either of these teams are running away. And it also depends. It depends. It depends really on who can really stretch the margins and really try and push the mistakes in this game.
Yeah, and I think you look at the likes of Mason Rudolph is not he's not the quarterback of the future for your team. He's not. I wouldn't say he's even in the top 15 starting quarterbacks in the league, but he has his games where he can be awfully productive. And I think that if you've got people like Pickens and Johnson, and even on his day, I know his day's been long gone, but Allen Robinson, I think that there's potential there. We've seen a lot of backup quarterbacks, the likes of Jake Browning, Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco in recent weeks, all do well despite not being the best quarterbacks in the league. So do you think potentially this goes to either Freddie really? And do you think that that's potentially, being overlooked? The fact that Mason Rudolph maybe isn't as bad as people would say, and he's got weapons there, like we've mentioned, the G Harris and Warren in the running game. But I think you look at those receiving core, and I think that as a city, as a duo, maybe even a trio, as well as like Pat Frymuth as a tight end, I think that maybe your offense is being maybe overlooked slightly.
Yeah. Sorry, Freddie. I'll go in and pass it on to you. I'm sure you may echo my feelings. You may think I'm complete rubbish, and you've got a different bit. Mason Rudolph, I think, has outplayed a lot of the backup quarterbacks in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I think he's been severely underrated. You only look across the division, and you got Joe Flacco, who has outplayed. He's one of the only backups who has outplayed Mason Rudolph. I think Jake Browning had a good start and has sort of dipped off, and it sounds silly, but I do think it's true. Out of the 3 quarterbacks that we've started this year, I'm most confident in Mason Rudolph to maybe win this game out of all 3. I think that he has experience. You sort of said about that we wouldn't really be going over the top. Yeah, weather permitting, we might not be, but I still think Rudolph can do it. I still think he's done it in the last few weeks where he can go over the top if he wants to, and it only takes a trick play or a draw play where he has a go at that, and maybe there is the one-on-one matchups, and the Bills have a pretty all right secondary, but there's definitely moments where we can take advantage. Frymuth is an excellent tight end. I rate him over a lot of tight ends, probably not overrate, but I overrate him because I'm a Steelers fan. I have the bias towards him, I suppose. I think he's a great safety valve. I think every team needs someone like that, and he's really good for the Steelers. So I actually have a lot of confidence in Rudolph, and that's why I am probably a bit more positive about this game than it maybe would have been, say, halfway through the season.
Now, other Freddie, your thoughts on Rudolph, and I want to ask you as well. I've already talked to our Freddie Hall about this when he came on a couple weeks ago about Kenny Pickett. Now, if Mason Rudolph goes out to Buffalo in that snow and wins the game, and even if he doesn't win or not and has a good game, is Pickett done, or do you see any way back? Because from the refusing to be a backup and all his struggles this year, and really last year he wasn't that great, really. If Mason Rudolph goes in and has a really good game and just loses, or if he beats the Bills, is Rudolph the starter next year for you guys?
Well, the first thing I'll say is Kenny Pickett never refused to be a backup. Don't listen to Mark Madden. But secondly, that's nonsense. I'm not even going to even talk about that. So it is a load of rubbish. But as for the Mason Rudolph, if he performs in Buffalo, I've got to say yes, really. But I've always liked Kenny Pickett, and to be honest, in the one of the big games he played without the guy I've mentioned so many times over the years on here, offensive coordinator. I'm not mentioning his name, but his surname is north of the border, very near Buffalo. Without him, it was very good. But then what we've seen with Mason Rudolph, let's just consider the defenses he's played against. The Bengals' defense has been atrocious this year. Nothing short of atrocious. And Kenny Pickett again threw for 300 odd yards against them. So again, turn perspective, Seahawks, we ran all over them. They're again another defense has been pretty poor this year, and the Ravens were resting a lot of players. So I'm still waiting to see really what we've got with Mason Rudolph. He's been very, very solid, admittedly against 3 not brilliant defenses, but we're coming up against the Bills in Buffalo in their prime conditions. They've got some very, very good players on that defense. This is the test, and we've seen so often the Steelers end the season very strong in the regular season, come up against a really good team away in the first round of the playoffs, and then they just get blown apart. So I don't know. I am reasonably confident, particularly in our, as you mentioned, all the offensive players we've got, and I think our offense is a bit underrated. We've certainly got some players that I very much love. I love Deontay Johnson. I think he's been much maligned for far too long. But I love our running back duo. Najee Harris, another one who I'm really glad now is who's getting some yards for his efforts. So yeah, I think we've got some really talented players, but there's a big but. We have got some holes, and as Freddie mentions, at mid linebacker is another thing we haven't really mentioned here. We lost both our key players in that position within a week of each other out for the season. We haven't got TJ Watt, so that linebacker line is looking really quite weak at the minute. Alex Highsmith has to step up. Cam Hayward's got to step up. We've got to stop their run game as much as they've got to stop ours. I think it'll be a bit too much, but there is some hope for the Steelers, I think.
Now we will get
sorry to interrupt you, Andy, off of Freddie Harper-Davis, because I do feel Charlie's probably feeling very outnumbered now. If it was one team that we had to lose to, I'm okay with it being the Bills, because I've definitely pounded the drum for the last 2 years that they should be winning the Super Bowl, and I fear that you are dangerously close to the window maybe shutting. So I think if we do lose to the Bills, it's a tip of the cap. They're a really good team, but my only thing would be go and win it all. Go and win and beat the Chiefs. Don't let the Chiefs win yet again. Let's not have another. Let's not. It becomes very dull very quickly when we have the same teams in it all the time. So.
I think the Ravens are the one team that worry me the most. But I think Freddie, you mentioned a really good point, which is I think the way that the Bills are going to attack this is to use their linebackers and attack that. Go attack those linebackers with our tight ends. I think Dalton Kincaid is key in this game, and also Khalil Shakir been playing really well as a slot receiver. He was our best receiver against Miami, and I think them with James Cook. We know that Josh Allen can throw it through the wind, and I think that's how they're going to attack it. That's the gap. But it's playoff football. It's going to be bad weather. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be smash mouth, and it's not going to be pretty. But it feels like the Bills have one or two cracks that they can exploit a few more than the Steelers can.
Yeah, as Freddie sort of really done a nice segue into what I wanted to ask you, because now I'm going to take into account that the first game was without Josh Allen. Not if you drafted at that point, I don't think. The next time he was still learning. But McDermott's playoff record is 4-5. Now, does this worry you at all? Because it's, we know the Bills' history, 4 Super Bowl losses, blah, 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 blah. But there's been a lot of disappointment in recent years. Look at the Bengals game in the snow last year. Look at the infamous 13 seconds. And there's been a lot of disappointment. And McDermott, if I'm honest, is yet to prove to me in a postseason scenario that he is the guy to win you that. So does that worry you in terms of this game, that you're the favourites, you're by far the favourites, probably, I think, the biggest favourites of the whole weekend, I'd say, out of all I think it's more than Dallas against Packers. I think it's more than Chiefs Dolphins, but I think do you think that maybe that could be the thing holding you back more than anything else, just the mental side of it, and just that thing of knowing that trying to win your first one for the team ever, the players have got that on their back, a bit like team behind me there trying to win the first Premier League in all these years. For a lot of years it was sort of a bit of a burden on the players, that sort of expectation and hope. So is that maybe something that could potentially cost you this game, just the mental side?
Without a doubt, there are two minds that rule this game as far as I'm concerned. One is Sean McDermott and the other one is Josh Allen. If Josh Allen can play for 4 quarters together, then the Bills win this game. We just will. He's the force of nature. When you saw the shift from the first half to the second half against Miami, when he's on it, I don't really see any team beating us. However, he's not always on it. And sometimes he coughs up the ball in places we'd rather he wouldn't. So I think that's one mental area where anything can happen. And the second one is Sean McDermott, and has proven in all kinds of games, not just playoff football, that sometimes his decision making is not good. And sometimes when the pressure is on, he turtles up and he goes more conservative when we should be going more aggressive. So yeah, I can guarantee you that nobody in Bills Mafia are betting the overs on that line. I think that if anything, we feel like this is going to be a really, really tight game. And it could come down to mistakes, especially in tricky weather conditions. This could be one of those sort of turnover games where the team that makes the least turnovers wins. It's not going to be flashy, that's for sure. So no, for sure, I don't believe the Bills are, I think, optimistic but not confident. We haven't seen it from McDermott yet. What I will say though is if the Bills can get past the Steelers, then it does open up, I think, a little bit to get to the AFC Championship game. No one else really worries me apart from the Ravens. I think the Ravens are a really, really good team, and I think getting to the AFC Championship would be a pretty good result for this season, given how bad it was looking midway through. But yeah, I think it's the mentality of this team which is under question, and that comes from McDermott. So yeah, it's definitely a worry. That's for sure.
I can imagine, especially as you could have been easily looking at that game on Sunday Night Football. Potentially, if the Jags had won against the Titans, that could have been the game that you're looking at going, well, if we lose this game, we're out the
Yeah.
playoffs completely. So to go from that to being a second seed is quite the jump. Predictions time. So we're going to go by one-on-one. Everyone's predictions for this game, and if you want, you can do a score as well. So Freddie Hall, over to you first. What's the score going to be, and who's going to win?
Steelers are going to win,
Okay.
obviously. I get my terrible towel as well out just to remind the Jaguars about this bad boy. Got this over Christmas, which is very good. Very, very happy with that. Straight from America as well. I have a friend who was going through Pittsburgh and managed to get me one. And I will go 18-15.
Okay. Other Freddie, your prediction for this game?
Well, I was going to wait. I'm quite glad I'm second because I was going to wait and see what Freddie said first. And if he'd gone Steelers to win, I'm going Bills. And if he went Bills, I'd have been the homer. So I'm going to go with the Bills. I'm going to go with my head and say that the Bills will have enough to win on Sunday. If it was dry and clean conditions, I'd have said the Bills would win in a blowout. But I'm going to be a bit more conservative and say they win 21-10.
Okay, and then Charlie, over to you for your prediction.
Yeah, so I'm going to go for a Bills win. I'm going to stick with the prediction I gave on my podcast this week, Bills from afar, which is 20-10 in the Bills' favour. I think this will be tight, and honestly, none of those results would surprise me. So, fingers crossed.
Okay, well, I've also got with me a terrible towel. I don't know if you can see out there. Also from America. But I'm not
compare towels. Compare towls.
I think mine's a bit muddy. I think I got mine off the floor, so I don't know how clean yours is. But
well, it's considering it's not left the house yet, it's impeccable. But I'm sure over the years it may get a couple of beers, blood, sweat, and tears soaked into it. So and you can't wash it because it then becomes your lucky towel, doesn't it? But unless we lose whenever I take it, and then it becomes the unlucky towel, and then it will get put in a box somewhere, never to be seen again. But yeah.
But yeah, I would love to sit here and go, Steelers are going to win. It would really help if Miami were to win and the Steelers won. It would mean that we would go, I believe, to either Texans or Browns on the road. But obviously, I don't expect either team to win. But a little spoiler for later on in our next episode. But yeah, I'm going to go for the Bills. I just think that I think they're just too strong. I think if TJ Watt was there, I'd be a little bit more confident in the Steelers. But I just think without him, I just don't think they've got enough to handle the Bills, who are one of the more informed teams. Now, I do think I won't be shocked if they lose because Josh Allen has these tendencies, but I also think he is the kind of guy you want in the big game. So for me, I'm going to go for the Bills. I'm going to go for a 15-10 win. It's going to be one of those weird scorelines, and the Bills are going to win. But yeah, that is where we'll end the podcast for today. Before we do go, actually, news broke in the last hour or two of Bill Belichick leaving his post as New England. Quite a short press conference for what it was. I was expecting a bit longer one, but quick take. We've got 7 minutes left of the recording, but what's your guys' take on that? Because obviously it's a guy who's tormented me and Charlie for the last 15-20 years, and obviously you guys in playoff situations. So your take on this departure. I'm going to let the reign go to any of you guys to go first.
Well, I guess given that we've played him an awful lot and lost him an awful lot, I should probably step in. The guy's a legend of the game, and it doesn't really matter his demeanor, his grumpiness, or anything like that. The guy's a legend of the game and won more Super Bowls than anybody, and he deserves respect. But I'm delighted he's leaving the division, if I'm honest. So if I had to listen to one more Belichick press conference where he just grunts or even doesn't answer questions, it's just too much. I think he's been a really bad GM in recent years. I think his drafting has been really, really poor, and he's run that team into the ground. He has really drafted badly, and I think that's what's caught up with this team. And I think the Patriots fans deserve some fresh, although those are the ones that are still there. The ones that haven't, just become Brady fans and focused on Tampa. The ones that are still there deserve a slightly better situation. But look, the AFC East is a gauntlet now. We have Rodgers, Allen, and Tua as the quarterbacks. It's a tough place to go and have to build a team. And it'll be very interesting to see what Robert Kraft does. I find it hard to see what's going to happen next. My heart says maybe it's a Mike Vrabel thing, but I don't know. Is that the best job, given the fact the AFC East is so tough? We'll see.
It's may surprise people. I actually want him to stay for the reason you're saying. He was a terrible GM. He was really struggling still, I think, to adapt to the modern day game, and he offense-wise looked really bad under Belichick, and Mac Jones looked terrible. So I think that in a way, I'm sort of glad he's gone, because he did cause a lot of problems for basically all my time being a Dolphins fan since 2009. I've been a fan, but at the same time, it's been that bad recently. They're going to get a new GM now. They're going to get a new head coach, and that might be the thing that turns them around to being a good team again, especially if they go and get a good quarterback in the draft. So I'm sort of in two ways about it. But Freddie's, your quick thoughts on the Bill Belichick departure.
I'll go first this time. Yeah, I think that I can echo, because we also lost to the Patriots countless numbers of times. Yeah, our record was about, I think we had 3 wins with Ben, and against sort of 18, 19 losses. So yeah, we're well known to have lost to the Patriots far too many times. And yeah, the same. And it's not just Belichick. We've just lost Pete Carroll and Nick Saban all in 24 hours. It was just a crazy 3 greats of the American football coaching world have all gone. And yeah, that the off season's mad already, and most of us aren't even in the off season yet. So yeah, crazy scenes. Belichick's a legend. I absolutely love him, to be honest. I say as a Steelers fan, I absolutely love the bloke. I love his press conferences, because it's so refreshing to finally see someone take it to the journalists asking the idiotic questions, the seriously stupid questions. And I'm glad that somebody just comes back and says, "No, I'm not answering that." But no, I agree. I honestly thought he would stay, but the Patriots would bring in a GM and just let Belichick coach, because I think as a coach, Belichick still very much got it. His defense still played well this year. Obviously, on offense, it's been a bit of a joke, but defensively, it's really well coached. It is every year. I think he'll still carry on. I'm not sure where he'll end up, but I think if he's in the right position and they've got a GM there who can work with him, that'll be the challenge. That will work out well for him. But as a coach over the years, yeah, fair play. You can't really say anything else.
It's hard to see him going into an interview and charming, somebody, though, isn't it?
He can be quite funny though when he's been on like the college game days. He's very funny. He has a very good sense of humor. I echo everything that's been said so far. Greatest coach ever. Greatest coach ever. It is remarkable what he did in New England, and it was a pleasure to watch at times. And it was frustrating to watch as a Steelers fan, as well as it was for the rest of us as well. My thing is sort of the same as Andy. I think he's failed to adapt, and unfortunately, you adapt to fail. Then he's not got younger in the right departments. His drafting's been terrible. He's not moved with the times, and I'm very much of a mindset of you have to change. You can't be scared to change. You have to adapt to change and move with change. You can still keep your ideals. You can still keep your philosophies, but you have to adapt them philosophies to the what is the modern game. I mean, it could be really fun if he went to the Chargers and Nick Saban was his OC. That could be the funnest thing we could ever see. But that is obviously I'm spitballing and joking on that with tongue in cheek. I don't think that will happen, but I think he'll carry on though. But I don't know where.
Interesting, and we actually have opinions on this one. Our Patriots fan on the podcast, and another Fred Patton. He's going to now tell us his thoughts on Belichick leaving the Patriots. And those are Freddie's thoughts on the news. And that's where we'll end the podcast for today. So first of all, thank you all for listening, and thank you to both Freddie's and Charlie for coming on.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for having us, Andy, and cheers, guys.
No problem at all. Right, for those of you who are listening to this podcast, enjoy the game. It's coming on Sky Sports and Game Pass. Enjoy it, and we'll see you guys for our Chiefs Dolphins review. See you then.